Hi everyone, I'm Ed the Green, and today we're going to talk about the AvidVaper Cisco 510 connector, what it is, how to use it, and all that good stuff. I'm going to install it into a mod. We're going to do a little step-by-step on how to do that. Let's talk about what this is. This is how it's going to come to you, kind of, sort of. Some of the parts were wrapped up in a little paper to protect it, but let's go down on what we got here. So it's a spring-loaded 510 connector, and it comes in pieces because when you assemble this, you want to put this together apart, solder your wires on there, and then assemble everything. A little later on, like I said, I'll show you how to do that. Mine came with the capture ring already on there. This is 22 millimeter diameter, of course 510 connector, and this is 304 stainless. And no, this is not the proper screwdriver, but these screws are loose, so I like to use this one because it's nice and quick and easy. When I tighten them, I will use, I believe it's a number 1. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to find out for sure. And it locks right in there absolutely perfectly. And that's what I'll end up using to tighten them down tighter. But when they're loose, I like this little precision screwdriver because it's nice and quick. Now, to give you an idea on what this capture ring does, you have your other styles of spring-loaded 510 connectors that have a nut that threads on, and you have to put this on your mod and thread the nut up and try to tighten everything. It can be a little bit difficult. This is absolutely super easy. So you would put the stainless steel on top of your mod, put the brass ring on the inside, and insert the screws. And as you tighten the screws down, it pulls up that brass, and basically it sandwiches the material in between. It can't move, it can't twist. You don't have to worry about trying to get this thing positioned right, because wherever you put your holes for the inside your mod, that's where it's going to line up. It's great. You also don't have that chance of having an atomizer that gets stuck on there, and the connector moving with the atomizer. It's just always going to stay there. So let's take these screws all the way out now. Alright, let's go through some of these other parts. We have a wave spring here, and this is all your compression. This is stainless steel. That's your. This is an Altum insulator for the top. Here's a little Altum washer, and when I understand, I believe these are good for 400 or 450 degrees. I'll have to take a look. This is your center pin. It is Trillium. Come on, baby. It is Tyrolean copper. And last but not least, I'm not taking these out of the bag yet, but there's these little C-clips. There's 2 of them. You don't need 2 of them. They give you 2 of them because they're spring clips, and if you accidentally slip on trying to get this in there, this thing could fly, and yeah, good luck finding that little guy there. So, all right, so let's start working on putting this in a device. I'm going to be replacing the connector on my box mod here. I do have a flat 510 spring-loaded connector. The problem with this one, the connector works good, but look at all the slop. The threads are just really loose, and I want to replace it. So we are going to remove that one and put in the Cisco 510. First up, let's remove our positive wire here. I got these nice little spring-loaded tweezers here. there's our positive wire. That's going to come out of there. And now I need to get this nut off, which like I said, this is the one part that was always difficult with these connectors, is trying to get this nut really tight so it doesn't move. Now we should be able to. There, she's off. Connector's out. Now we just gotta remove this guy right here. Same thing as before. Grab it. Heater up. Slide her off. Now let's prep the center pin. I have this little block of wood. I have drilled this little small hole. Holds the 510. Send the 510 center pin. And all I'm going to do, I put a little bit right on the tip. Stick it down in there. It's going to get warm, pretty hot, fairly quickly with my soldering iron, and then I put some solder right down in the bottom there. So that's that part. This is kind of pre-tinning. It's getting solder in there, and I do the same thing with the wire that's going to be going into that center pin. Pre-tin it, which basically means put solder on it first. Don't try to put the wire in there and then try to hold the wire in there and solder at the same time. I'll show you. Up next, I got to make the hole a little bit bigger to accept this. Now, there is an option if you wanted to actually thread this into a device, and if you do that, you'll need a 11 by 1 millimeter tap to do that. But we're not going to do that here. So I've already made this hole a little bit bigger to accept this connector, and what I used was a common 7/16 drill bit and make that a little bit bigger. But I have 2 more holes I have to do as well. So I'm going to set that on there right where I want it. I'm going to line it up just the way I like it. If you like it like this, good on you. I'm going to line them up just like that. And then I'm going to mark those holes. And drill them out. And now we have 2 holes. I used a 104,000 size drill bit, because I got all that kind of stuff here. These holes really don't matter. If you actually wanted to with these, you could actually just cut this out. You know, especially if you're machining a device, you could just have this a little notch cut in. It doesn't need to be a hole, because once you tighten these down, that connector is not going to move anyways. So a hole that's big enough for these screws to go in easily. You know, so they have play. You know, not a tight hole, because we're not threading into this. Now another option with this connector is aluminum stainless steel device, and you just wanted to screw this directly to the body, as if your body is your ground and you're not running a ground to this. You can drill the holes out to accept a what is it, a 2.5 millimeter screw. And I'm not sure what the pitch is on that, but AvidVaper will be able to get that for you, because I can't remember what the pitch is on that on these screws here. So yeah, so let's move forward. All right, up next, I'm going to sound my my ground wire to the brass nut here, the capture screw. I've already got the wire has already got some solder on there. Didn't worry about putting solder on the brass. These are a little bit easier because you can actually go all the way through with the wire and then do a little something like this. And as you can see there, make sure it cools off before you move it. And as you can see, that is a really solid joint. That's not going to come off because I made sure that solder stuck to it. That's really hot. Let's give that a minute to cool. Okay, this next part is very important if you're replacing the 510 connector like this. You know, normally what you would do if you're doing a brand new build, you would put the wire in your little copper center pin, have it in there ready, assemble it, and then run your wire where you need to go. Since we're not doing that, we need to make sure we put a couple parts on this wire first. Definitely one is this capture ring. We definitely got to go through that. So we're going to run that up through. Actually, and then I'm going to go into the hole and out the top. So capture ring's in place. Then the Ultim washer is next. Get that on there. And by the way, this is 14 gauge wire. According to spec, this will go up to a 12 gauge wire. And here it is. It stuck to the magnet. My wave washer, my wave spring, I'm sorry. Put that on next. So make sure your capture ring, make sure your positive wires run through your capture ring. Make sure your Ultim washer is on, and make sure your wave spring is on before you put on the 510 center pin. And we're going to do that right now. I have my lovely spring-loaded tweezers that hold on. I love these things. We're going to try and do this without the helping hands. I do have helping hands as well. You know, this little contraption, but a lot of times I don't need it. I got a little more control sometimes like this. So let's see what we got here. Clean soldering iron. I just put a little dab of solder on there, and now doing it this way, since I've already got solder inside the pin and the wire here is pre-tinned, I should just basically have to lay this, get everything warm. Alright, so we're going to put this center pin on there. Had to reshoot this because I wasn't in frame. So, like I was saying before, I have solder inside the connector already, and my wire is pre-tinned. So it's already got solder on there. So I'm not trying to hold the pin on there and the wire and the solder and the soldering iron. You just don't have enough hands. So put solder inside your connector, inside your center pin, pre-tin the wire, and it's all just going to slide in. Put a little bit of a little drop of solder on there. That helps transfer the heat much quicker. Get that on there. Just heat it up. we should, oops. And it just slides right on. There we go. She's on there now. And I'll tell you, that is never coming off, because that the solder inside the center pin melted to the solder inside the wire. It's a very solid connection. Okay, we have all of our soldering done. Now we need to assemble the connector. So, 510 connector, this Altum insulator. You're going to put the cup side up. This whole assembly then goes in just like that. So it's the little Altum cup, center pin, wave spring, Altum washer, and then that little spring-loaded snap ring. I'm gonna try a slightly different camera angle with this one, because since I'm installing this with the wire already in the mod, it makes it a little more difficult than attaching the wire to the chip or the board when you're done, or to your positive, whatever, if you're making a mechanical, or your switch. So, like I said, the cup's in there, center pin, wave spring, washer, and this all goes down inside. Just like that. Now, here is our little spring-loaded C-clip. You're going to get one side in, one side tucked in, like so. A lot of times, if you can hold it with your fingernail on that one side, and then come in with the other side with a pair of tweezers. And there's going to be tricks to doing this. Everyone's going to find their own way. There we go. Yeah, this is really not. So I got the one side in. It's tough to see. And there it is right there. Okay, I got it in there, but I want to make sure it is pushed down all the way around. Make sure it's down. And so one way to know that it's down, here's the C-clip right there. There's a little notch in here, and that's to help you get underneath that C-clip and pop it out if you have to make any repairs or whatnot. But if you can take one side and push it on around like that, see how it moved and it turned? It should be seated in the groove well. Now, of course, give it some tugs. I've got this little tool here, and I'll screw it all the way down until it stops, and I just give it a little nudge, not a lot, just a nudge, and if it doesn't pop out the back, then you've got that C-clip seated in there right. If you didn't, that C-clip would pop out, shoot across the room, but that's okay because we have a spare. Okay, we're up to the final assembly. Let's make sure our threaded holes are in the right spot. We're going to take and push that all in. Line our holes up. Put our screws in. and then start tightening them down. Okay, I goofed. This is the awesome part about doing these live. Well, kind of live, but doing them on the fly. Unscripted, I should say, because I didn't script any of this stuff. So what I did is that I've got on the capture ring, I've got a big goober of solder on here, which is not going to let this sit flat. So I should be able to, with these, get that pretty darn flat. That is pretty flat. Oh yeah. So keep that in mind. Don't put a whole lot of solder on that backside. Otherwise, this retaining washer will not sit flush against the against the underside of your device. Grab the other screwdriver that I got that really locks in there good. Oh, that's nice. And of course, on this one, and I'm going to probably have to modify this box a little bit, but this is touching this right here, this little bump. So I'm probably going to just Dremel out right around in here and make that sit flush for me. That's much nicer. Just did a little dremeling on that plastic, ABS plastic, so it cleaned up really good. But I mean, really easy to put this in. I mean, no trying to hold that back nut and tighten it down. It's right where I want it. Look at that. So I'm going to pretty up these wires, put all this back together, put some batteries in it, and fire it up. That, my friends, looks very nice. The tension on this 510 is got a really good tension. I've had other ones that are a little soft, and I have a little bit of a problem with a couple of my tanks that it doesn't push up hard enough on the center pin. But now look, like this is normal. A little wiggle is fine, because you don't want 510 threads too tight, but that other one was so sloppy. I mean, look, that's just really nice fit. So there we have it. That is nice. Man, I really like that.